Lauren Hayes walked into the Grand Council chamber with her head held high. She had been Earth's ambassador for 20 years now, and she had seen many difficult days. But today felt different. Today felt dangerous. The chamber was massive, with walls made of crystal that caught the light from nearby stars. 47 different alien species sat in their designated areas, all watching her with eyes that ranged from curious to hostile. The leader of the council was called High Arbiter Zekthar. He was tall and thin, with 4 eyes that never seemed to blink at the same time. Right now, all 4 of those eyes were focused on Lauren, and none of them looked friendly. "Ambassador Hayes," Zekthar said in his deep voice that echoed through the chamber, "humanity has gone too far. Your species arrived in our galaxy only 100 years ago, yet you now control 17 colony worlds. Your military fleet grows larger every year. The Council has decided this cannot continue." Lauren felt her stomach tighten, but she kept her face calm. She had known this was coming. For months, the older alien races had been complaining about humanity's rapid growth. They were scared, though they would never admit it. These aliens had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They were comfortable with their power, and now humans were disrupting that comfortable order. "What exactly are you demanding?" Lauren asked. Another alien stood up. His name was Shintok, and he represented the Velkori species. His body looked like a giant insect, with a hard shell that gleamed under the lights. "You will dismantle your military fleet," Shintok said, his voice making a clicking sound. "You have 3 months to comply. If you refuse, we will impose severe sanctions on all human worlds." Lauren took a deep breath. This was worse than she had expected. They wanted to leave humanity defenseless. "Our fleet operates within all established laws," she said firmly. "We have broken no treaties. We threaten no one." "You threaten the balance of power," Zekthar replied. "A species as young as yours should not possess such military strength. It is unnatural. It is dangerous." Other aliens began to speak up, agreeing with Zekthar. Some spoke about human aggression. Others talked about the need to maintain order. Lauren listened to them all, knowing that nothing she said would change their minds. The vote had already been taken. The decision was made. The council wanted, humanity weakened, and they would not take no for an answer. When the session finally ended, Lauren left the chamber with her aide Connor Price walking beside her. Connor was young, only 30 years old, but he was smart and loyal. Right now, he looked worried. "They're really going to force this," Connor said quietly. "What do we do?" Lauren glanced around to make sure no one was listening. "We tell them the truth," she said. "Get me a secure communication line to Admiral Grant. It's time." Connor's eyes went wide. "You mean?" "Yes," Lauren said. "We're going to show them what humanity has really been hiding." Back on Earth, deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral Richard Grant sat in a command center that very few people knew existed. He was 70 years old, with gray hair and a face marked by decades of military service. When Lauren's message came through on the secure channel, he listened without interruption. His expression never changed, but his hands gripped the armrests of his chair a little tighter. "So they've finally pushed us into a corner," Grant said when Lauren finished. "Very well. Initiate Protocol Ancients." The officer standing next to him, Commander Paul Stevens, looked nervous. "Sir, are you sure? Once we reveal the fleet, there's no going back." "I'm sure," Grant said. "We always knew this day might come. The Council thinks they can bully us because they believe we're weak. It's time we showed them the truth." Grant pressed a button on his console. The message he sent was short and simple, but it traveled to secret locations all across the solar system. Hidden bases that had been built in the shadows, far from Earth where no one would notice. Places where humanity had been keeping its greatest secret for 70 years. In the Kuiper Belt, far beyond the orbit of Neptune, ancient machines began to wake up. These machines had been sleeping for a very long time. Some of them had been waiting for 50,000 years. Now, finally, they were being called to serve again. The ships were enormous, each one measuring over 3 kilometers long. Their hulls were dark and scarred from countless impacts over the millennia. But inside, their systems were coming online one by one. Power reactors that should have been dead were suddenly humming with energy. Weapons that had not fired in ages beyond counting were charging up. Shields that could withstand the fury of a star flickered into existence. These were not human ships. Humanity had not built them, but humanity had found them, hidden in the dark spaces of the solar system. And humanity had learned how to use them. Admiral Grant watched on his screens as all 17 vessels reported ready status. Each ship had a full crew of volunteers who had trained in secret for years, waiting for this moment. These men and women knew they were about to change history. They knew that nothing would ever be the same again. "Send the message to Ambassador Hayes," Grant ordered. "Tell her we're ready. Tell her it's time to show the Council what happens when you back Earth into a corner." Lauren received the message while she was preparing for the next Council session. She read it twice, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. This was it. No more hiding. No more pretending to be weak. Humanity was about to reveal a secret that would shake the entire galaxy. She walked back into the council chamber with Connor following behind her. The aliens were already in their seats, looking satisfied with themselves. They thought they had won. They thought humanity would have no choice but to submit. Lauren stepped up to the podium and looked at each of them in turn. "Honored delegates," she began, her voice clear and strong. "Humanity has considered your ultimatum. We reject it." The chamber erupted in angry voices. Aliens shouted and demanded explanations. Zekthar raised his hands for silence, his 4 eyes blazing with anger. "You reject it?" he said. "Then you accept the consequences?" "No," Lauren said calmly. "We offer an alternative. I am transmitting coordinates to all of your ships. Please direct your sensors to those locations. What you are about to see has been hidden from the galaxy for 70 years, but we hide it no longer." On screens all around the chamber, images began to appear. One by one, 17 massive warships came into view. They hung in space like ancient gods, dwarfing even the largest vessels in the Council fleet. The chamber fell completely silent. Every alien stared at the screens in disbelief. Zekthar's 4 eyes were all wide open now, his mouth hanging slightly open. "What are those?" someone whispered. Lauren smiled. "Those," she said, "are the architect ships, and it's time you learned the truth about what humanity discovered." The story of how humanity found the ancient ships began 70 years earlier, long before humans ever met another intelligent species. Back then, Earth was still alone in the universe, or so everyone thought. Humans had only just figured out how to travel beyond their own solar system, and they were busy exploring their cosmic neighborhood. Captain Helen Morrison commanded a deep space survey vessel called Discovery. Her job was simple but important. She and her crew traveled through the outer solar system, mapping asteroids and comets, looking for resources that might be useful someday. It was usually boring work. Day after day of scanning rocks and ice balls that all looked the same. But then one day, everything changed. Lieutenant Jake Foster was on duty at the sensor station when he saw something strange. At first, he thought it was a mistake. The readings made no sense. He ran the scan 3 more times, and each time the result was the same. "Captain," Jake said, trying to keep his voice steady, "you need to see this right now." Helen came over to look at his screen. She was a veteran officer with 15 years of experience, and she had seen a lot of strange things in space. "But she had never seen anything like this. Is that what I think it is?" she asked quietly. "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "It's artificial, and it's huge." The object was attached to a small planetoid in the Kuiper Belt. It was made of metal and other materials that their sensors could not identify. The structure measured over 3 kilometers from end to end. Its surface was covered in tiny craters from millions of years of impacts. It looked old. "Very old. How long has it been here?" Helen asked. Jake checked his readings again. "Captain, based on the radiation damage and impact cratering, I'd say this thing has been here for at least 50,000 years. Maybe longer." Helen felt a chill run down her spine. 50,000 years ago, humans were still living in caves. They had not even invented writing yet. But someone somewhere had built this massive structure and left it floating in the outer reaches of Earth's solar system. The Discovery spent 6 months examining the object from every angle. They mapped every square meter of its surface. They analyzed its composition. They searched for any way to get inside. Finally, they found an entrance on the side that faced away from the sun. Helen led the first team inside. They wore full spacesuits and carried every scientific instrument they had. The corridor beyond the entrance was wide enough to drive a truck through. The walls were smooth and featureless, made of a dark material that absorbed their flashlight beams. "This place feels like a tomb," one of the crew members whispered. Helen understood what he meant. There was something deeply unsettling about walking through corridors that had been empty for longer than human civilization had existed. Every footstep echoed strangely. Every shadow seemed to hide secrets. They explored for hours, finding room after room filled with equipment they could not understand. Some chambers were as large as football stadiums. Others contained machines that hummed with power even after all these millennia. And deep in the heart of the structure, they found something that would change everything. The archive room was different from the others. The walls glowed with a soft blue light. In the center of the room stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal was a crystal device that pulsed with energy. When Helen touched it, the entire room came alive. Images appeared in the air around them, showing things that had happened long ago in places far away. "Get Dr. Nathan Cole up here immediately," Helen said into her radio. "Tell him to bring all his equipment. I think we just found a library." Dr. Nathan Cole was a linguistics expert who specialized in ancient languages. He had joined the mission hoping to study any alien artifacts they might find, though nobody really expected to find any. When he saw the archive room, his hands started shaking with excitement. Nathan spent the next 2 years working on decoding the information in that crystal device. It was the hardest work of his life. The language was completely alien, with no connection to anything on Earth. But slowly, painfully, he began to understand. The beings who built this place called themselves the Architects. They had been an advanced civilization that rose to power in this part of the galaxy. Over 50,000 years ago, they had built cities on thousands of worlds. They had mastered technology that seemed almost like magic. But then something terrible happened. Something came from beyond the edge of known space. The Architects called it the Devourers. It was a force that consumed entire solar systems, breaking down matter itself to fuel its expansion. The Architects fought against the Devourers for 1,000 years. It was a war that devastated the galaxy and killed billions. In the end, the Architects won, but the cost was terrible. Their civilization was destroyed. Their people were scattered and dying. The survivors knew they did not have much time left. So they made a plan. The Architects built warships, hundreds of them. These were not ordinary vessels. They were masterpieces of engineering that used technology far beyond anything in the modern galaxy. Each ship was powered by reactors that could run for millions of years. Their weapons could crack planets. Their shields could withstand the direct blast of a star, and the Architects hid these ships across the galaxy, in places where they might be found by other species who would come after them. The ships were designed to be awakened and used by whoever discovered them. They were a gift and a warning. A gift of incredible power, and a warning that the Devourers might someday return. "We've found 17 of these ships so far," Nathan explained to the hastily assembled government committee. "Each one is a fully functional warship. The Architects left detailed instructions on how to operate them. They're waiting for someone to crew them and bring them back to life." Director Lisa Manning, who led the committee, leaned forward in her chair. "Can we actually use these ships?" "Yes," Nathan said. "It will take time and training, but yes. The ships were designed to be operated by crews much smaller than what we use. 300 people could run one of these vessels. The Architects built artificial intelligence systems to handle most of the complex operations." "And the weapons?" someone else asked. Nathan's expression became grim. "The weapons are beyond anything we currently possess. One of these ships could probably destroy our entire modern fleet by itself." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. Finally, Lisa spoke again. "What do you recommend we do?" Nathan looked around at all of them. "We need to decide whether we tell anyone else about this. In a few years, we're going to make first contact with the galactic community. When that happens, if we tell them about the Architect ships, every major power will want them. Wars will be fought over this technology. But if we keep it secret, we'd have a massive advantage," Lisa finished. "We'd look weak on the surface, but we'd have incredible power hidden in reserve." "Exactly," Nathan said. The question is, what kind of people do we want to be? Do we share this discovery or do we hide it? The debate lasted for months. In the end, secrecy won out. It was decided that humanity would hide the architect ships and tell no one. When humans finally met aliens and joined the galactic community, they would play the role of newcomers learning their place. Meanwhile, in secret bases scattered across the outer solar system, they would study the ancient warships and train crews to operate them. For 70 years, humanity kept the secret. They built their own fleet of modern ships, respectable but not threatening. They made friends and traded with alien species. They joined the Galactic Council and followed its rules. And all the while, they prepared for the day when the secret would have to be revealed. That day had finally come. The silence in the council chamber was complete. Every delegate stared at the screen showing the 17 massive warships. Some of the aliens looked confused. Others looked angry. But most of them just looked scared. High Arbiter Zekthar slowly stood up from his seat. His 4 eyes moved from screen to screen as if he could not believe what he was seeing. "What are these vessels?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Lauren Hayes stood at the podium, calm and composed. She had prepared for this moment for years. "We call them the architect ships," she explained. Humanity discovered them 70 years ago. They were hidden in the outer regions of our solar system. They are warships built by a civilization that existed long before any of your species developed written language. The Velkori ambassador Shintok made a choking sound. "That is impossible," he said. "Our people have been exploring this galaxy for 20,000 years. We have surveyed every corner of this sector. There was no ancient civilization." "With respect, Ambassador, your surveys missed these ships," Lauren replied calmly. "The architects existed approximately 50 to 60,000 years ago. They were builders on a scale that defies imagination. And they left these vessels behind as a legacy." Another screen lit up, showing Dr. Nathan Cole speaking from Earth. He was older now, his hair completely gray, but his eyes still burned with the same excitement they had when he first decoded the architect archives. "Delegates," Nathan began, "what you are seeing represents the most important archaeological discovery in galactic history. The architects were a spacefaring civilization that rose and fell in the distant past. They built these warships for a specific purpose: to fight an enemy that threatened all life in the galaxy." A delegate from the Myreni species raised a tentacle. Her name was Ambassador Kalara, and she was known for being cautious and intelligent. "What kind of enemy?" she asked. Nathan's expression became serious. "The architects called them the Devourers. According to the archives we recovered, the Devourers were a force that consumed entire star systems. They broke down planets and stars to fuel their expansion. The architects fought a 1,000-year war against them and eventually won. But the cost destroyed their civilization. The chamber erupted into chaos. Delegates shouted questions in dozens of languages. Some demanded to see proof. Others called for the immediate seizure of the ships. A few just sat in stunned silence, trying to process what they were hearing. Zekthar raised his hands, calling for quiet. It took several minutes for order to be restored. When the chamber was finally silent again, he turned to Lauren with a hard expression on his face. "You have hidden this from the council for 70 years, he said. "This is an unforgivable betrayal of trust." Lauren did not flinch. "We made the choice we had to make," she said. "When humanity first joined the galactic community, we were weak and vulnerable. We had no allies, no protection, no standing. If we had revealed the architect ships then, what would have happened? Every major power would have demanded access to the technology. Wars would have been fought. Millions would have died. We chose to wait until the time was right." "And what makes this the right time?" Zekthar demanded. "You forced our hand," Lauren said simply. "You demanded that we dismantle our fleet and leave ourselves defenseless. We cannot and will not do that. So instead we offer you a different solution." She activated a holographic display above the chamber floor. It showed detailed plans for a new military organization. Humanity proposes the creation of a joint defense force, operating under council authority but with independent command. The architect fleet will form the core of this force, protecting all member species from external threats. In exchange, humanity requests full partnership status in the council and an end to all discriminatory policies. The proposal landed like a bomb. Delegates immediately began arguing about it. Some saw it as reasonable. Others viewed it as blackmail. But everyone understood the underlying reality. Humanity now had the most powerful fleet in the galaxy, and there was nothing anyone could do about it. Admiral Grant watched the proceedings from his command center on Luna Base. Commander Stevens stood beside him, monitoring multiple screens showing data from across the solar system. "They'll accept the proposal," Grant said quietly. "They have no other choice." Stevens nodded, but his attention was focused on a different screen. "Sir, we're detecting something unusual. Multiple contacts emerging from hyperspace in the Thornax sector. The energy signatures don't match anything in our database." Grant's relaxed expression vanished instantly. "Show me." The main display shifted to show the edge of council space. 3 enormous objects were appearing out of hyperspace. They looked organic, like massive creatures made of twisted flesh and pulsing energy. As the sensors refined their readings, the horrifying scale became apparent. Each contact was larger than an architect warship. "Get me Nathan Cole," Grant ordered. "Right now." Nathan's face appeared on another screen. He was already pale, his eyes wide with shock. "You're seeing it too," he said. "Tell me this isn't what I think it is," Grant said. Nathan swallowed hard. "Admiral, those energy signatures match the descriptions in the architect archives. Those are devourer constructs. They've come back." In the council chamber, alarms began screaming. Every delegate's personal screen lit up with urgent alerts. The debate about humanity's proposal was instantly forgotten as new information flooded in. Ambassador Kalara's voice cut through the chaos, high and terrified. "The Thornax colonies," she said. 6 worlds. They're under attack. I'm reading complete loss of contact. All 6 worlds gone." Lauren felt ice form in her stomach. 6 worlds. Millions of people. Just gone. Zekthar turned to her, and for the first time since she had known him, she saw real fear in all 4 of his eyes. "Ambassador Hayes," he said. "How soon can your ships reach Thornax?" 20 minutes, Lauren replied immediately. "But I need authorization to deploy." "You have it," Zekthar said without hesitation. "All Council military forces are now on maximum alert. Ambassador, humanity has operational command. Protect us." Lauren opened a communication channel to Admiral Grant. "You heard that, Admiral?" "I did," Grant replied. "The Eternal Watch and 5 other ships are already moving to Thornax. Captain Sarah Blake is in command. They'll be in position within 15 minutes. Lauren closed her eyes briefly, sending a silent prayer for the crews who were about to face an enemy that had destroyed an entire civilization 50,000 years ago. On the bridge of the Eternal Watch, Captain Sarah Blake stood at her command station, watching as the stars stretched past them at impossible speeds. She was 38 years old, and she had spent half her life training for this moment. Now that it was here, she felt surprisingly calm. 2 minutes to Thornax, her navigator announced. Sarah looked around at her crew. They were the best humanity had to offer. Some were veterans like her. Others were young and eager. All of them knew they were about to make history. "Battle stations," Sarah ordered. "All weapon systems online. Shields to maximum. When we arrive, assess the situation first. Do not engage until I give the order." The ship dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Thornax system. What Sarah saw on her screens made her blood run cold. 3 massive devourer constructs floated in space near the 4th planet. Long tendrils of dark energy extended from each construct down to the planet's surface, and the planet itself was dissolving. Its continents were breaking apart. Its oceans were evaporating. The entire world was being consumed, converted into raw energy that the devourers absorbed. "Life signs?" Sarah asked quietly. Her tactical officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper, checked his sensors. His face was pale. "None, Captain." The population was 4 million. "There's nothing left." Sarah gripped the armrests of her command chair. 4 million people dead, and this was just the beginning. "All ships," she broadcast to her fleet. "This is Eternal Watch Actual. We engage on my mark. Target priority is stopping the planetary consumption. Weapons free." The ancient warships moved forward, their drives pushing them to velocities that made modern vessels look stationary. After 50,000 years of sleep, the architect ships were going to war once again. The 6 architect warships closed in on the devourer constructs like wolves approaching their prey. On the bridge of the Eternal Watch, Captain Sarah Blake watched the tactical displays with intense focus. She had trained for 15 years to command one of these ancient vessels, but nothing could truly prepare someone for this moment. Range to target? She asked. Lieutenant Dan Cooper checked his console. 15,000 kilometers and closing. Weapons are fully charged and ready to fire. Sarah took a deep breath. Somewhere down on that dying planet, 4 million people had just ceased to exist. She could not save them, but maybe she could stop this from happening to anyone else. All ships lock targets on the nearest construct. Fire on my mark. She paused for just a second, then said, Fire. The Eternal Watch's main weapon unleashed a beam of pure energy that lit up space like a newborn star. The other 5 ships fired at the same moment. 6 beams, each one carrying enough power to vaporize a city, struck the Devourer construct simultaneously. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The construct's organic hull ruptured, spraying chunks of biological matter into space. The creature convulsed, its feeding tendrils whipping wildly as they withdrew from the planet below. For a moment, Sarah allowed herself to hope that one shot would be enough. Then the construct began to regenerate. Target is healing, Cooper reported, disbelief clear in his voice. Hull integrity returning to 80%. No, 85% now. It's accelerating. Sarah felt her hope drain away. The architects had warned in their archives that the Devourers were difficult to kill. Now she understood why. These things could repair damage almost as fast as it was inflicted. All ships continue firing. Don't let it finish healing. The architect vessels poured fire into the construct, their weapons blazing continuously. The creature's hull ruptured again and again, but each time it healed a little bit faster, and now the other 2 constructs were turning their attention away from the planet toward the attacking ships. Incoming fire, Cooper shouted. The Devourer constructs launched organic projectiles, living weapons that moved through space with terrifying speed. The Eternal Watch's shields flared as the impact struck home. Each hit sent shockwaves through the ship that Sarah could feel in her bones. Shields holding at 70%, Cooper reported. Captain Jack Martinez's voice came through from the Void Sentinel. Sarah, we're hitting them hard, but they're adapting. Each time we fire, the damage is a little less effective. They're learning to defend against our weapons. Sarah understood immediately. The Devourers were not just regenerating. They were evolving in real time, adjusting their defenses to counter the architect weapons. If this fight lasted too long, the advantage would shift to the enemy. All ships form up on my position, Sarah ordered. She was making a dangerous decision, but she saw no other option. Prepare for a concentrated assault. Captain Linda Ross's voice came from the Starbreaker. Captain, I'm reading a central node on each construct. It's heavily shielded but radiating massive energy. If we can hit all 3 nodes at once with overwhelming force, we might be able to disable them before they adapt. Can we penetrate their shields? Sarah asked. Only if we drop our own shields and concentrate every weapon we have on a single point, Linda replied. It's risky. We'll be vulnerable. Sarah looked at the tactical display. The Devourers were growing stronger with every passing minute. The dying planet below was almost completely consumed now. If they did not act soon, the constructs would finish their meal and move on to the next system. All ships, listen carefully, Sarah said. We're going to hit them with everything we have. Form a tight formation on my mark. When I give the order, drop shields and fire all weapons at the central nodes. We'll have one chance at this. The 6 ships moved into position, so close together that their shields were almost touching. It was a formation that would have been suicidal under normal circumstances. If the Devourers focused their fire, they could destroy the entire fleet in minutes. 30 seconds to optimal firing position, Cooper said, his voice tense. Sarah watched the enemy constructs closing in. Their organic forms pulsed with alien life, their tendrils reaching out like the arms of some deep-sea nightmare. All ships stand by. 20 seconds. Enemy fire intensifying. Shields at 50%. Hold your positions. 10 seconds. We have multiple shield failures across the fleet. Sarah's hands gripped the command chair armrest so hard her knuckles turned white. Wait for it. 5 seconds. Shields critical. Now. Drop shields and fire everything. The 6 architect warships dropped their defensive shields simultaneously. For a brief moment, they were completely vulnerable. Then they unleashed their combined firepower in a coordinated strike that turned the vacuum of space into a cauldron of destruction. The beam struck the 3 Devourer constructs at their central nodes with pinpoint precision. The sheer amount of energy focused on those 3 points was beyond calculation. It was enough power to sterilize a solar system, concentrated into 3 targets the size of buildings. The Devourer constructs had no time to adapt. Their defenses, which had been evolving to handle the steady assault, could not cope with this sudden overwhelming surge. The central nodes overloaded, unable to distribute or absorb the massive energy influx. For one frozen moment, nothing happened. Then the constructs exploded. The detonation was unlike anything Sarah had ever seen. The three massive beings disintegrated, their organic matter spreading outward in expanding clouds of debris. The shockwave hit the architect ships, tossing them around like toys despite their enormous mass. "Damage report," Sarah shouted over the alarms blaring throughout the bridge. "Hull breaches on decks 5 and 6, Cooper replied, working frantically at his console. "Shield generators are offline. Main power is fluctuating. But we're alive, Captain. We're alive." Sarah let out a breath she had not realized she was holding. "Status of the other ships?" "All vessels report moderate to heavy damage. No casualties. The enemy contacts are destroyed." Sarah looked at the main screen. Where 3 Devourer constructs had been, now there was only debris. Slowly drifting chunks of organic matter that would float through the Thornax system for centuries. But the planet they had been feeding on was gone. In its place was a field of broken rock and cooling magma. 4 million people had lived there this morning. Now there was nothing. "Get me a channel to Admiral Grant," Sarah said quietly. Grant's face appeared on the screen moments later. He looked older than he had just hours ago. "Report, Captain. Enemy contacts destroyed, sir. Fleet damage is moderate. We suffered no casualties," Sarah paused. "But the planet is lost. We were too late." Grant closed his eyes briefly. "Understood. You did what you could, Sarah. Now listen carefully. We're detecting more Devourer signatures at 3 other locations. They're appearing across Council space. This wasn't a single attack. It's an invasion." Sarah felt exhaustion wash over her, but she pushed it aside. "How many more contacts, sir?" 16 and counting," Grant replied grimly. "Every available architect ship is being deployed. The Council's own fleets are mobilizing as well. But their weapons are less effective against these things. We're going to be fighting a lot of battles in the coming days." "Understood, sir. The Eternal Watch will be ready." "I know you will be, Captain. Grant out." As the channel closed, Sarah looked around at her crew. They were exhausted, some of them injured, all of them shaken by what they had witnessed, but they were also determined. The Devourers had come back after 50,000 years, but this time they would not find the galaxy unprepared. This time, the ancient warships had crews to command them. This time, the architect's legacy would not fail. Sarah stood up from her command chair. "All hands, this is the captain. Damage control teams, get us back to fighting condition. Medical teams, treat the wounded. Everyone else, prepare for our next engagement. We knew this day might come. We trained for it. Now we prove that humanity deserves to crew these ships." She looked at the debris field that had once been a planet and made a silent promise to the 4 million dead. This would not happen again, not while she could still fight, not while the ancient warship still had power. The war against the Devourers had begun, and humanity was not backing down. 3 months had passed since the Battle of Thornax. 3 months of constant fighting, of victories and losses, of learning how to fight an enemy that should not exist. Ambassador Lauren Hayes stood once again before the Galactic Council, but the chamber looked very different now. The old rivalries and suspicions had been burned away by the fires of war. Delegates who once argued about trade routes and territorial disputes now worked together, planning defensive strategies. The council had been transformed by necessity into something it had never been before, a unified government with a single purpose: to survive. High Arbiter Zekthar looked older now. The stress of coordinating a galactic war effort had taken its toll on him. But when he spoke, his voice was still strong. "The Joint Defense Initiative has been ratified by all member species. The Architect Fleet will serve as our rapid response force. Ambassador Hayes, on behalf of the Council, I must acknowledge that humanity's contribution has been essential to our survival." It was the closest thing to an apology that Lauren would ever receive, and she accepted it gracefully. "The threat we face affects all of us," she replied. "Old disagreements don't matter anymore. What matters is protecting the innocent from an enemy that wants to consume everything." In the past 3 months, there had been 16 more Devourer incursions across Council space. Each attack followed the same pattern. The constructs would appear without warning, target populated worlds, and begin feeding. The architect ships had managed to stop most of the attacks, but not all. 3 more planets had been lost, along with their populations. The casualties numbered in the tens of millions now. Every species in the Council had lost people. The shared grief had created a bond stronger than any treaty ever could. Dr. Nathan Cole had spent those 3 months buried in the Architect archives, searching desperately for any information that might help them win this war. What he found was both terrifying and illuminating. The Architects fought the Devourers for 1,000 years, Nathan explained to the Council's Strategic Planning Committee. They won, but only barely. Their civilization was destroyed in the process, but they learned something important. The Devourers follow a pattern. They emerge from beyond the galactic rim approximately every 50,000 years. They consume what they can reach, then they retreat back to wherever they come from. Admiral Grant leaned forward in his chair. Why do they retreat? The Architects believe the Devourers need time to process what they've consumed, Nathan replied. They break down matter at a molecular level and convert it into energy and raw materials. That process takes time, so they feed for a few years, then withdraw to digest their gains. That doesn't help us, Commander Stevens pointed out. Even a few years of attacks will devastate the galaxy. No, but it gives us a different option, Nathan said. He activated a holographic display, showing a region of space beyond the edge of known territory. The Architects believe the Devourers have a home, a place where they originated. They spent decades trying to find it but never succeeded. However, they left us their research, their best calculations about where this home might be located. The room fell silent as everyone realized what Nathan was suggesting. You want to take the fight to them, Lauren said quietly. The Architects tried that too, Nathan admitted. They sent 3 expeditionary fleets into dark space to find the Devourer home. None of them returned. But we have advantages the Architects didn't have. We know more about the enemy now. We have their navigational data, and we have their ships. Admiral Grant studied the star charts Nathan was showing. How many ships would we need for an expedition like this? The archives recommend a minimum of 10 vessels, Nathan replied. Enough to handle any threats you encounter, with redundancy in case of losses. That's more than half our operational fleet, Captain Sarah Blake pointed out. She had been promoted to Commodore after her actions at Thornax. If we send 10 ships on this mission, the Council will be vulnerable. The Council has its own fleets, Grant said. And we've started building new weapons based on Architect technology. They're not as effective as the originals, but they can hurt the Devourers. Within a year, we'll have enough modern ships equipped with these weapons to defend Council space. The debate continued for weeks. Some species argued against the risk. Others insisted that humanity should bear the entire burden. But eventually, pragmatism won out. An expedition would be launched, and it would be a joint operation involving multiple species working together. Admiral Grant personally selected Commodore Sarah Blake to command the expedition. At 41 years old, she had more combat experience with the Architect ships than anyone else. She had faced the Devourers 4 times now and survived each encounter. If anyone could lead an expedition into dark space and return alive, it was her. You understand this might be a one-way trip? Grant asked her privately. Sarah looked at him steadily. I understand, sir. But if there's any chance we can end this threat permanently, we have to take it. 6 months later, the expedition fleet assembled at the edge of Council space. 10 Architect warships, each one carrying a mixed crew of humans and aliens. It was a powerful symbol of how much had changed in just 1 year. Species that had barely trusted each other before now prepared to face the unknown together. Captain Linda Ross commanded the Starbreaker. Captain Jack Martinez led the Void Sentinel. Each ship carried not just warriors, but scientists, engineers, and diplomats. They would be gone for years, possibly decades. Some of them would never return home, but they all went willingly, knowing what was at stake. Sarah stood on the bridge of the Eternal Watch, looking at the fleet she would lead into darkness. Beside her, Lieutenant Dan Cooper prepared the navigation systems for the first jump. He had been with her since Thornax, and he had volunteered without hesitation for this mission. All ships report ready, Commodore, Dan said quietly. Sarah activated the fleet-wide communication channel. She had thought about what to say for weeks, but now that the moment was here, she spoke from her heart. This is Commodore Blake to all expedition vessels. 70 years ago, my species found these ships floating in space. They weren't built for us. They were built by people who died fighting to protect a galaxy they would never see saved. Today we take these ships and continue their mission. We're going into the dark, beyond the edges of any map. We don't know what we'll find. We don't know if we'll come back, but we know why we're going. She paused, looking at the stars ahead of them. We go for every species in the Council. For every world that deserves to see tomorrow. For the architects who left us this legacy, and for all the people who will come after us. We're going to finish what they started all those thousands of years ago. We're going to end this threat once and for all. The 10 ships activated their drives simultaneously. The ancient engines built by hands that had turned to dust before humanity learned to write, powered up one final time. The ships accelerated, pushing beyond light speed, beyond anything the modern galaxy had ever achieved. One by one, they vanished into the darkness between stars. On Earth, Admiral Grant watched them go from his command center beneath the mountains. Beside him, Ambassador Lauren Hayes stood silently, knowing that some of the people on those ships would never return home. "Do you think they'll succeed?" Lauren asked. Grant was quiet for a long moment. "The architects left us those ships because they believed someone would be worthy of their legacy. They believed someone would finish their war. I think that someone is us. Not just humanity, but all of us together. Every species working as one. If anyone can do this, it's Sarah and her fleet. And if they don't come back, then we keep fighting," Grant said simply. "We do what humans have always done. We find a way or we die trying. We don't quit. We don't surrender. We face the dark and we push forward no matter the cost." Lauren nodded slowly. It was a very human philosophy, but in the past year, it had become a galactic one. The Devourers had taught the galaxy something important. When faced with extinction, old differences didn't matter. Pride didn't matter. Only survival mattered and the will to fight for it. In the depths of space, far beyond the reach of any telescope, the expedition fleet pressed onward. They carried with them the hopes of billions, the dreams of species who wanted to see their children grow old, and the legacy of the architects who had fought this same war so long ago. The war was not over. The battle ahead would be harder than anything they had faced before. But for the first time in 50,000 years, the galaxy was fighting back with purpose and unity. And leading that fight, flying ships older than any living civilization, humanity had finally found its place among the stars.